Fox News alert. We have new court documents from the Ryan Ruth case. It's a letter from Ruth himself. According to the filing, he's ditched his lawyers and is going solo in court. Ruth also has some demands. He wants the death penalty and a little romance. Quote, why is the death penalty not allowed at nearly 60? A life of nothingness without love. What is the point? Why is it nothing at all? Why is it not all or nothing? And if that doesn't work, Ruth's open to a little prisoner swap. His preferred destinations, Hamas, Iran, or China. Ruth even said he'll freeze to death in Siberia in exchange for a Ukrainian soldier. Such a good guy. Meanwhile, Trump's other assassination attempt in Butler is hitting its one-year anniversary Sunday. The Secret Service says it was a mass operational failure at all levels. But Trump's giving them some grace.
They should have had somebody in the building. That was a mistake. They should have had communications with the local police. They weren't tied in. And they should have been tied in. So there were mistakes made. And that shouldn't have happened. And that building was a prime building in terms of what they were trying to do. So, but I was satisfied in terms of the bigger plot, the larger plot. I was satisfied. And I have great confidence in these people. I know the people, and they're very talented, very capable. They had a bad day, and I think they'll admit that. They had a rough day.
There's still a lot of unanswered questions left, like how did Crooks go unnoticed by Secret Service on the roof, and why do we still know nothing about him? Hopefully, a new Senate report will shed some light on all of that. But that doesn't change anything for the lives already impacted. Corey Comparator died a hero that day, protecting his daughter while shielding her from gunfire. And his widow, Helen, is demanding answers along with the EMS team.
I'm literally waiting to see the cavalry to come and swarm that building.
He was waiting, frustrated. He's watching these people. Where is the response that's going to take care of this?
It was the ultimate failure of the Secret Service.
I just can't believe that building was left, not even checked.
Nor can we.
It was right there.
Yes.
What really gets me is that there was a threat and they let him come out on stage. If they would have just held him, none of this would have ever happened.
Since that interview aired on Fox Nation, the director of the Secret Service called Helen and set up a meeting. And finally, she's going to get an update on Corey's case. Others are sharing their stories from that day, too. Journalist Selena Zito was only 4 feet away from the podium when gunshots were fired.
And then Michelle, your advance guy, laid on top of me.
And we were right next to them.
Yeah, you were right next to, yeah.
You mean so you were in the pile?
We were right next to them when they went down. Secret Service jumped on top of them. We were rolling the whole time.
It was a terrible, terrible thing. But there was a lot of bravery with Secret Service, the way they jumped on top, et cetera, et cetera. Bullets are flying all over the place. A lot of people would have said, I'll take a pass. Normally, they'd be running. You didn't have anybody flee. You didn't have anybody stampede. Nobody. And there were some people behind me. They stood up and they're looking like, I tell you, you want to have them in a foxhole with you. I want to meet some of those people.
Selena is the author of the new book, Butler, The Untold Story of the Near Assassination of Donald Trump and the Fight for America's Heartland. And she joins me now. Selena, it's amazing to think about that it's only been 1 year since that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And, so much changed in the country in that moment. A lot of that has to do with how President Trump handled when he was leaving the stage, right? He didn't allow himself to be carried. He didn't allow himself to be on a stretcher. And he made this moment where he turned around and said, fight, fight, fight. And a lot of people have projected on why they think he said that. A lot of that goes around explaining it as vanity. But the next day, President Trump called me, and he actually called me 7 times. And what he told me when I asked him about why he said that, he said, in that moment, I'm representing not Donald Trump, the man, I'm representing the presidency. And it's very, very important that I show what we represent, which is strength and grit and exceptionalism and never backing down no matter what comes at us. And I had an obligation to do that. And I understood that would impact not only the people behind me, but also the people watching across the country. And so I think that's why we saw that day that people they didn't stampede. They didn't go crazy. In the hours afterwards, when they were still kept in the parking lot, they were standing around holding each other, hugging each other, singing, sharing water bottles, right? He set the tone not only with strength, but he also set the tone that we're going to be okay. And I think that's a nuance that's often missed in explaining what happened that day. And you saw that throughout the rest of the campaign, but also how he comports himself as president in this new term.
Yeah. And of course, not only was he representing the potential presidency, but he was also representing the political process, which in a lot of ways is even more important. You write in your book about that phone call when you talked to him, and he only wanted to ask about you.
He did. He called me the next morning and he said, Selena, this is Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. Like I don't know that's you, right? And he said, I just wanted to see if you are okay, your daughter, your son-in-law okay. My daughter's the photojournalist who took the photo of the cover of the book. And he said, I'm really sorry also that we didn't get to do that interview.
And you were like, I'm not the one that got shot, sir, but thank you.
Yeah.
Selena Zito, amazing, amazing. Can't wait to read your entire book. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.